Howdy, howdy, folks. So, you might be wondering, you might ask me, Nate, how is aura good, but tulpas are bad? Well, it's simple. It's because aura is a genuine manifestation of a particular item, and its effect on its surroundings and its effect through time that extends outside of its immediate personage. Whereas a tulpa is something that is masquerading as either separate or masquerading is separate and masquerading as like and part of a particular object or person or belief system, something like that. And tulpas were mostly something from Tibetan Buddhism, but at the same time, I cannot find. I've done tons and tons of studying into Buddhism. I cannot find anything in traditional Buddhism, Buddhism from more than 200 years ago. So it is my firmly held belief that tulpas are a manifestation of theosophy and created in part by secret societies in order to override the natural order of the spiritual world and its effect on reality. Simple as I've said before, neo-progressivism and neo-traditionalism are both halves of the same coin, both highly corrupt. They're both things that have thrown white paste over our ability to actually see reality as was set up by the scientific minds of our greatest ancestors. And we're throwing away all that work in the process. So, sometimes I wonder what life would be like for me and my friend, who I introduced Christian to, if I had never done that. And sometimes I wonder what my own life would be like if he had never introduced me to Kiwi Farms shortly afterwards. See, I'd been lurking for a few years, and then I found out that Josh was streaming, and in the participation of Josh streaming, I actually found out, oh, this isn't a super scary hacker, stalker website. This is actually a normal website full of normal people. And as its reputation has started to precede itself more and more as it enters the public eye, it actually does become the place where insane stalker-minded people come. And it's funny, stalker children is a particular term used by the farms to denote anybody that has a Patrick Tomlinson-esque affect to their speaking, right? But it is true that some people consider it a what was the word? Gang stalking website. And some people just view it as the scientific observation zone that it actually really is. Now, if you pretend to be an idiot, soon thereafter you will find yourself mistakenly in the company of real idiots. So keep that in mind. Chatroom Riz is basically the equivalent, the millennial equivalent of stand-up comedy, whereas Gen X is more specialized in stand-up comedy. Millennials are, and Gen Z for that matter, are more specializing in sit-down comedy in various chat rooms for various subjects and various streams. It's pretty funny. So, the history of James the Sixth of Scotland and James the First of England, same person, is wild. Genocide of the Gaels of the Isles, and in the process, he set up a guy named Patrick Stewart. Not that Patrick Stewart, not the Patrick Stewart I respect the hell out of, who plays Jean-Luc Picard on Star Trek, but the Patrick Stewart of Orkney, who was a very, very evil man, who did horrifyingly evil things. It's very hard to find the accounts of them, but you can find them if you hunt. And he also encouraged the burgeoning Anglicanism in England, despite his mother, Mary, Queen of Scots, being a devout Catholic who was betrayed by the York Rite who then would be very influential in setting up Anglicanism through Henry VIII, and also just obliterating Ireland to make plantations, which is the foundation of the English going around the world and obliterating native areas for plantations to create this global trade network, which is the backbone of globalism itself. His son was Charles I, Charles Gigachad I, and I've talked about Charles I before. He is a interesting leader. He's definitely worth a read, and he ended up being betrayed and killed by the Londonering Parliament, of which James I, his father, fed this horrific, ravening, feral beast. Not like the inhabitants of Mercia, but indeed this node of evil in the world that would bear the fruits that we see today. At least he was nice to Ireland, unlike Henry VIII. And it's interesting when you study the Tyrone Rebellion that pushed back the Ulster Plantation for a while. The Irish, they weren't going to go down without a fight. And frankly, I'm glad they never did. Because if things had gone differently, we might have all ended up inbred sons of London. Thankfully, we're not. Gustavus Adolfus, also a spear of willpower. Oh, before I get off of James I, James VI, he is the King James. He injected a whole bunch of inaccurate demonology into Christianity, like himself. And he's the one that rewrote the Bible that we, as Americans, have the most of any other book. And the reason why is because he founded both Canada and the 13 colonies in Virginia. And in Canada, it was Newfoundland, I believe. Newfoundland or Labrador, one of those two. And, well, he was one of those great men of history, but at the end of the day, there was tons of problems that came with that. And it's part and parcel of the work of a tremendous amount of people, and historically banked in a particular time slot. So back to Gustavus Adolphus, the spear of willpower in Sweden. He revolutionized warfare, whereas people had been riding up with cavalry before and doing battle with cavalry and cavalry flanking and stuff like that. He had re-engineered the system of cavalry flanking with small gunpowder arms in order to demoralize and basically break the willpower of the enemies in a more ancient way than what had become traditional Catholic honorable battle. And quite frankly, gunpowder warfare doesn't have as much honor to it as the chivalric, the warfare of knights, and so it's not really all that much of his fault. In fact, he would lay down standards that the rest of the people would follow for a time. He wanted to make the Holy Roman Empire Protestant. Funny enough, eventually that would be accomplished through the works of Martin Luther and the Hohenlohrenzens of Prussia. And though they were more secular than Protestant, they did unite Germany. And it was only Bavaria that held out their Catholic beliefs. Martin Luther was right when he was younger, but he was very wrong when he was older. And that likely is due to the fact that he was trying to reconcile with all the contradictions of people who had more power than him. And that drove him to lust for power in such a way that he literally started the process of self-genociding your lower population. This is a long German story that starts in the late 15th or the mid 15th century, or excuse me, the mid 1500s. I always get that a little mixed up, how that jogs up a bit. But he would start the process of genociding Catholic peasants. That would continue all the way up until Hitler. And I say it still continues to this day, where good, honest, religious people, whether they Catholic or Protestant, are sidelined for this globalist, secularist, book club run embarrassment. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. You know, Reagan was a pretty noble man. He believed in freedom, and he didn't want to see people being tortured and killed in his country. And they, as I said, they took a lot of the electroshock torture equipment that was being used in our asylums, and they moved it over to Argentina in order to participate in the Peronist, ideologically backed, almost liberation theology adjacent underground of Vatican II that would later it would involve the early life of our current Pope Francis Bergoglio. And he would be adjacent to these areas where this electroshock torture was being taken place. And Opus Dei actually would try their hardest to take the children of the parents that were being killed and tortured and killed and put them in a family and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons why Opus Dei is a Masonic adjacent organization. Being adjacent to these operations keeps extreme quietness, because they're trying to do the whole SS officer saving Jews thing and try to inject a little bit of good into the bad situation. I've always said that there are good people in every bad group, and there are bad people in every group that you perceive as good. Unfortunately, we've gone back to the camps torturing people, and the main thing is the philosophy that says that because you are upset about something, or because I have managed to make you crazy about shit, this is where the own the libs trigger the libs actually goes towards. I will diagnose you as abnormal, despite the fact that normalcy is a completely subjective term. I will put you into a camp and torture you until I can show you to be truly abnormal after the process of being tortured tremendously. This is a long-term strategy implemented by evil people, just as the same as the long-term strategy implemented by evil people where they roll into somebody else's land like Ireland, like America, burn it all down, set up a plantation with slave labor. It's lazy, doesn't make a lot of money, it's destructive of the natural long-term productivity of the area, and the consequences are exactly that: dire destruction. So moving on, high-speed rail is just a vanity project for aloof rich kids who put travel in their social media bios. Like, really, it's not. As I've said before, and I gotta stop saying this, I've said this before, that the high-speed rail system in America is a farce perpetrated by the same people who, like, the liberals that have pointed to Europe and been like, we need to be more like them. And it's just like, yeah, we need to be more like them in the case of health regulations, in the case of genuine science, the sort of science that we practice here in America with our vaccines, with our doctors, would never pass the mustard in Europe. They would never allow it, because they know exactly where that comes from. Our Operation Paperclip brought in a lot of those Nazi scientists. And then in 1945, we would start putting fluoride in the water in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Not a coincidence. Operation Gladio was started by a lot of Nazis and a lot of Sicilian mafia people, and the members of the mafia that wouldn't sell heroin for the US OSS ended up getting tortured horrendously with their balls in a vice, getting lashed by a salty whip, and electroshock with a cattle prod. That's Operation Gladio. Like, that's actually Operation Gladio. It's not some, oh, we're protecting America from the Soviets and the communists. It is quite literally You are as bad as your enemies because you've turned into a monster in the process of fighting monsters, and thus you found yourself in the company of truly evil people. It's sad, but I'm not going to ride my friends about that sort of shit. Like, they'll come around eventually, and I think with a lot of the declassified CIA documents, we'll start to see more and more into that. You know, Zionism doesn't actually care about the words. It goes after a lot of words, very, very tepid and non-critical words. But it's more about control. You see, the neo-Nazis bend the knee. The ones that don't get absolutely and utterly obliterated and be pinned up as an example. But the ones that don't are in network with the sort of Benjamin Netanyahu, Yair Netanyahu circles of Zionists that have re-weaponized Nazism in the current era. And who knows how close high-level Nazis and high-level Zionists like George Soros's uncle, who went around scamming a bunch of Jewish people before the Holocaust and like dipped out with a bunch of money, scamming his own kin, mind you. Who knows how close that were? I mean, we all know that Hitler was a quarter Jewish, but I don't believe in things like race science. What I do think is that there is a genuine long-term connection that ends up becoming the basis for the claims for this insanity that's popped up since the 80s. These people that have managed to, I would say the closest people to bioengineering and biohacking are the Israelis of the modern era. The ones that do not have, you know, your semi-orthodox, not fully orthodox, but in the line of tradition Jewish faith, the ones that do a tremendous amount of drugs, they have managed to hack their brains more effectively than almost anybody else, and that's exactly why they can do those things and sleep at night. And that's exactly why they can prevent everybody else from sleeping, whether you're in Guantanamo Bay or sitting in your bed. And people like DeSantis, and he may not realize it, but people like Pete Hegseth are the, you know, if the Jews are holding the lash, they're the ones pulling the boulders. And at the end of the day, they'll say that was all us. You're not gonna get numbered among the workers, and maybe your posterity wouldn't want to know. But for that small little bit of clout, that small tiny lump sum, they tap out their posterity's futures and become something unworthy of memory. It's very sad. Did you know that St. John Bosco had the power to summon wolves? Pretty cool. More wolves! No more mimes and clowns! Sick of this shit! Get out of here! Can we pretend that shower calls in the nighttime are like friendly texts? God. Oh, Lord. Have mercy, have mercy. Now, speaking of which, Nick Rekieta. I don't want to talk about this a lot at all on this podcast. Nick Rekieta went through a lot of shit recently. It's a lot of, probably anybody that's watching this already knows. But you know what? You want to see him get sober, stay on testing, and don't go to fucking Las Vegas and party, you fucking idiot animal. That's exactly what he wanted to do as soon as he, like, got out of the court shit. And take care of his fucking kids, because the nightmare his kids are going through are probably fucking, it's probably really bad. Like, it really, really is gonna scar them for life, and he doesn't even seem to give a shit. And that pisses everybody off so much. It's gonna get him killed one day. And we won't want these kids to lose their father, and we don't want these kids to end up in CPS. Like, it's traumatizing even if your parents are a piece of shit, are pieces of shit, to lose them in any way, shape, or form. So we want him to get his shit together, and we want him to take care of his kids again. But that this culture in America where it's okay, you know, it's okay to do horrible, evil, destructive, disgusting things as long as you know, you're making money, you got a 6-figure job, you can do whatever you want. Like, that's fucking demonic. That's demonic. Some people really get off on tearing down other people's work, and it takes 5 minutes to destroy 20 years worth of work. A lot of Herostrati out there burning down the Temple of Apollo just to say they did it. And you see this a lot today in America because of our fucking media and what Hollywood has done to people's brains through the music industry. You know, the Harlem jazz scene selling heroin, selling cocaine into the inner cities, into the black communities. That's something that the CIA has been doing for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades. And it's not just black people, as some people say. It is literally the most evil people that the planet has seen this far. And we gotta reject that. We gotta call that out. We gotta reject that. Anyways, back to something a little bit more lively. Apparently Elon Musk is attempting a highly autistic coup. We love to see it. He's literally like trying to like hack the computers in DC right now. It'd be wild to try and see what the hell that ends up manifesting. Like, he could end up killing our president. Like, if he really thinks that he's gonna do some sort of like a Argentinian-backed, surprise and consolidate power and become emperor for life or something. Like, he really doesn't know what it takes to become emperor for life, which is to be from a royal lineage, right? And that's what Clinton thought. And we don't have that set up in this country, thankfully. Like, Xi can become emperor for life because for 5,000 years, excuse me. For like 1900 years, China has had that shit going before the century of humiliation, which is now over. And you can't become an emperor for life in this highly fluid country. Now, I can see Trump getting in there for a third term, because it's like, if people democratically elect you to 3 terms, which is something that's happened before, let them do it. Like, who genuinely is the people who gives you shit about 2-term limits? Nobody relevant. Nobody who's speaking on anything like genuinely impactful or insightful. Just people who are like used car salesmen for fucking ideas in our shitty, decrepit democracy that needs a complete overhaul. Like, if you work in construction, you can kind of tell, all right, that can be fixed up, but that shit needs a complete overhaul. You need to tear that shit down to the ground and rebuild it. And that's essentially where a lot of our systems are at right now. And it sucks for the people that are doing good, that have tried their hardest to put the world on their fucking back and to continue to do good with the limited resources that they have, but that's not the vast majority. The vast majority is in dire straits and has run the gambit from becoming just a straight up like dark money, black market money laundering scheme, like a lot of Medicare has become, thanks to people like Rick Scott, or just completely decrepit and unhelpful to anybody and still costing money. Money isn't really the main thing. The main thing is people's attitudes, and that's one of the reasons why I can't fucking support unions fucking ever. That attitude shit is terrible. Like, I don't like it when I see my, coworkers taking too many bathroom breaks when they don't really need to, you know what I'm saying? I work real hard. By the end of the day, if that person is feeling kind of sickly that day, like genuinely needs to take a few extra bathroom breaks, I'll pick up the work for them. I just don't like this nonsensical, oh, boss makes a dollar, I make a dime, therefore fuck you, dude. Like, really? He makes a dime out of his boss's fucking dollar. And that goes up the line quite a bit. And at the end of the day, executives only exist to get fired. So if you shoot one of them, then you end up fucking like just moving forward that chain. And the interesting thing about the Luigi Mangione thing is the fact that the CEO that he shot, was actually being investigated for insider trading. And I've had the theory before that bag full of Monopoly money was supposed to be a bag full of real money, and then he kind of just dissociated about it, and that's why he was wandering around and ended up in a McDonald's, because he was supposed to be able to get on out of there with the funds. And those people that were supposed to help him at that point never came. But like, where'd he get that silencer? He's from a pretty rich family, but I'm pretty sure that silencer is a little harder to get than you'd think. Just saying. repeating Maoism while under the guise of American patriotism. We hate to see it. We hate to see it. I was talking about that a lot in this episode, so I think that'll suffice. We hate to see it, folks. We hate to see it. I see Trump agrees with me that we have far too many coffee companies, because we mercantilists now, baby. We taxing on them coffee mill countries, you know? And now we don't need to have 10,000 different coffee companies. We really don't, because most of that coffee is shit anyways. As I said before, and I'll probably say again, America drinks way too much coffee. I say as I'm drinking coffee. I'm burping on the mic. Yo, it's MC burping on the mic. But listen, buddy. If you can condemn tens of millions of people who supported Bernie over Hillary and Bernie over Biden because of communism, you're no better than the Soviets. You're no better than the people who take the state-run propaganda and run it against their neighbors to the detriment of everybody and the long-term success of their country. That's what it is. Anti-communism as a dedicated philosophy is pretty wild. Never heard of the Velvet Revolution? It was when Czechoslovakia threw off the chains, the slavery of communism in their country peacefully. And that shows that it can be done. Yugoslavia, also relatively peaceful. But then afterwards, guess what happened? Bill Clinton, a new type of Democrat who was supposed to work alongside the Republicans in this new bipartisan push, ended up bombing the shit out of Serbia illegally, taking a chunk of Kosovo, which is their place, and then calling it a new country, which is a fake country of which Beau Biden was a desk jockey in. Beau Biden also, mind you, the DuPont family, one of the families, one of the like 5 or 6 main families involved in Operation Gladio, one of the scions of the DuPont family raped his 3-year-old daughter. And Beau Biden, as a lawyer, got him off with nothing more than a $5,000 fine. We managed to create a demonic hybrid of Ingsoc from 1984, but in real life. And, you know, that book isn't quite... It's like if you take Brave New World in 1984 and you synthesize them, that's kind of what we got in the 90s, you know? Now it's like it's even grayer. Most softness, love, and art in this life is found in between the austerity of extremes. And we really need to be more mindful of our balance, the thing our ancestors prized above most other things. There's good people, and then there are those that weaponize everything between earth and hell, against sovereignty, sanctity, and the livelihood of all men. Don't be like them. You know who they are. The little fleeting bit of pleasure that they get from serving their own enemy is not worth it. Not worth it. Some people legit read C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters as an instructional booklet. And I encourage anybody who is listening to this, as I've done before, to read C.S. Lewis's The Screw Tape Letters. There's a really good audiobook narrated by Jean Cleese. Cardinal Fang! Cardinal Fang! A great guy. Very funny man. A little bit shitty politics, but hey, whatever. I take methodology very seriously. Too many times has the road to hell been paved with good intention, so we need to look out for that. I like the time scale of these podcasts. You can put me on 1.5x and split screen Subway servers. That'll work. Oh, well. All right, y'all. Cheers. Take care and have a good one.